So today we are here with this next session with author Sowmiya Ashok in conversation with Dr. Vidya Dehejia. To give you a short background on the book, The Dig Keeladi and the Politics of India's Past by Sowmiya is a book that explores the controversial archaeological site of Keeladi in Tamil Nadu, using it as a lens to examine the interaction of history, science, politics, and politics in India. Blending investigative journalism, travelogue, and historical analysis, her work highlights how archaeological findings become battlegrounds for national identities and political narratives, making complex ideas accessible through ground reporting and interviews. In conversation with her is Padma Bhushan awardee Dr. Dehejia, who is a renowned Indian art historian, author, and professor emerita of Indian art at Columbia University. Fascinating and enlightening. We're just looking forward to this beautiful discussion. Here's to you now to take it forward.
Thank you for that introduction. We need the mic? Yeah. We do need it. Okay. It's a delight to be here in conversation with Sowmiya Ashok. I'm not sure. I know that everybody is online these days, and that social media is everywhere, and anybody who isn't on social media just doesn't exist, more or less. So I'm assuming that many of you have, in fact, been on social media and seen what a storm there has been in Tamil Nadu over Keeladi. Now, it's something, Goa is in a way sort of withdrawn from that. We're right in the middle. We're not in the south. We're not in the north. Not sure. And in a manner of... Okay. So in a manner of speaking, it hasn't aroused as much interest and as much emotion as it has in Tamil Nadu. So, assuming that many of you don't really know very much about Keeladi, maybe I'll just give you a short introduction. And then I think what I would like to do is to ask Sowmiya to introduce herself to you, tell you about her background, how she came into this, and then I'm sure a whole lot of you don't know a thing about me, so I'll do a brief introduction, and then we'll plunge into the material. So what is it about Keeladi that has got Tamil Nadu and everybody in that state so excited, so interested in what one would think is the driest of subjects? Archaeology, digging, and yet everybody is there, busloads of people going to Keeladi and to the other sites and so on. So I guess to give you a very brief introduction, our history of India has always been projected to us as the Indus civilization, and then there's the second whole area in the Ganges Valley where you have urbanization, and then you go on to Ashoka and so on. The South is always left out of this, and it has been assumed that it was urbanization in North India that came to the South. What these excavations are showing us is that there was an urbanization at about the same time as it was in the Ganges Valley, perhaps 200 years earlier. That's still under debate, so that South India and South Indians don't owe their civilization and culture to a movement from the north. So this is what has completely got everybody in Tamil Nadu excited, and it sort of explains why everybody is rushing to this site and to other sites to reclaim a heritage which in a way they have felt has been taken away from them by the north. Just one more thing about this period in the South and why it has raised so much excitement. There is this wonderful literature called Sangam literature. And it is an entire series of Tamil poems based on 5 different ecological zones. And basically, there's an aham and a puram, an internal that is love, and an external that is war. And there's this wonderful corpus of poems. And there's always been discussion about the date, and more or less people had said 3rd century BC to 3rd century AD, somewhere there. What these excavations have done is to push the date of those Sangam poems also back, apparently. This is for discussion. And I think everybody is quite happy with a date of about 600 BC for the start of the Sangam period, although the archaeologist in charge has now moved it to about 800 BC. So suddenly we have this efflorescence, this rich urban culture in South India. And this is why there's so much excitement. So, with that as a sort of a brief background, Sowmiya, would you introduce yourself to this audience? Tell them what got you excited and into this subject.
Sure. Thank you so much for spending your Friday morning with us. Thank you specifically to Vivek for inviting me. This is my first time in Goa where I've come to engage in something intellectual. I've generally come to party in the past. I no longer party, I'm older now. I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for 15 years. And one of the things I really love in journalism is long form writing. So to me, this book is really an ode to many things that's missing in India right now, which is good journalistic writing. I set out to do a journalistic work, and I hope I've achieved it. The book's been out for nearly 2 months, and one of the feedback I'm getting is it's not preachy and it's very neutral. So that was my objective, that all of us live in a very complex India. We all have a specific ideology which we can't sort of get rid of, even if we try. And we have huge opinions about somebody else's ideology. I wanted to make sure this book doesn't reflect that about me, apart from the fact that it's me as a journalist. So I've worked in several newspapers, and in the last 3 years, I have produced this book. This is my first nonfiction book. And I just a bit of background on, I went to university in Melbourne. That was my undergrad in economics. I have nothing to do with economics anymore. I don't even read the business pages in the newspaper. And I did my journalism in the Asian College of Journalism in Chennai. And then I went to Columbia Journalism School. So we have that in common, that we were at the same university. Of course, Dr. Vidya was teaching there and I was a student. And ever since, I have made it a point in all newspapers to push for longish pieces. So I worked with the Indian Express for 4 years, and if you go through that period, nearly every other Sunday, I was trying to get real estate in newspaper, which is the middle pages, which is the big picture that we write about. And they sent me to China, so I had the wonderful opportunity to work and live in China for a year, and started my studies in Mandarin. So I speak a little bit of Mandarin, but because of this book, it's been shelved, so I hope to get back to it. And right now, I am basically going city by city to convince you to buy my book.
I highly recommend the book too. It's fascinating reading. Okay, a little bit about myself. If you know me at all in this audience, you probably know me as an art historian who has written several books on the artistic history of India. But what most of you wouldn't know, maybe even Sowmiya doesn't know, is that I started life as an archaeologist. So,
On the internet.
oh. I went to Cambridge University in England to do archaeology. I studied and worked with one of the famous archaeologists, Raymond Alshan, and his wife Bridget Alshan, and they were working on microlithic cultures of what they called Tinnavelli in those days, Tirunelveli. I was all set to do archaeology proper in my career. And then I went to Pune and talked to H.D. Sankalia, who was even then, one of these great scholars of great archaeologists. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh my God," he said, "if you join this dig, I'll have to get my wife to come with me because you can't be the only woman in this dig." So those were the days when it was rather difficult in certain fields to get accepted. So the rest is history. I moved to the history of early art, and then it became later, and so on. So that's my sort of bit about archaeology. Let's get to the actual dig, and would you like to say a few words, Sowmiya, first about where the current situation with this controversy? Well, first of all, let me tell you, with all this, with the whole museum being set up and so much publicity, the actual excavation report has not been published. So everything we've got is either online, or if you've been to the site itself, you can read the labels that are attached to the various exhibits. And you come to learn about this urban culture, which seems to have been very sophisticated, which seems to have had a complete, maybe dying and workshop and a lot of things that Sowmiya can tell you about. But would you like to say what the situation is with the archaeologist Amarnath Ramakrishna, who is responsible for this entire excavation, and why and how this whole excavation report, which we're all longing to get our hands on, has been held up?
Sure. So, just for some background on the site itself, I've used the English word Keeladi. In Tamil, it's Keezhadi. This is a controversy also that many people have a problem that I didn't use the ZH when I spelled it out. And the reason I say in the prologue itself is when the Tamil Nadu government or the ASI writes about the site in English, it is spelled in the way that I have spelled it. So, just for a it's been about 10 years since the site was discovered by Dr. Amarnath Ramakrishna and his team at the Archaeological Survey of India. And few years ago, he wrote a 700 plus page excavation report, submitted it to the ASI headquarters. I remember that morning because my phone buzzed with a photo of him standing, giving the excavation report to the DG of the ASI. And it's been under review since. So what happened mid last year was this particular report came under scrutiny by two experts at the ASI who asked him to justify the 800 BCE date. They said that the AMS, which is a radiocarbon dating test, has not been conducted for that particular date. And is it something that can be qualified with further research? So can you get back to us on this? Now, this particular internal document was made public. It became a huge controversy. And the thing with Keeladi is every time it is in the news, Tamil Nadu truly erupts. We go crazy. We feel this is a affront to what we believe in as our civilizational past, and that there were public rallies, there were online campaigns, and then the ASI put out a statement that they will publish the report shortly. I found out through media reports that a printer is something they've put in for to acquire a printer in the ASI, which is being delayed, so that might delay the publication even more. And then off late, in the last few weeks, there's been more reports on another inquiry on the actual report, which calls out some of the issues with it, which once again Dr. Amarnath Ramakrishna has responded to. In fact, he even called it an AI written report from their side. So this internal battle is going on between the employer and the employee. And I think the problem with this internal battle is it reduces the Keeladi story to just one man and one particular issue. I would suggest, I mean, I've said this before in a News Minute interview, that I think this, when I was doing this reporting, a lot of people told me, back when, and I'm sure you can attest to this, that back when there was a discovery in India, there were conferences held where archaeologists came, and I think H.T. Sankalia was very big with this, where he invited people to Pune, to Deccan College, where people sat, and it was 2-3 days of archaeological conferences where they debated finds, right? There's neither been a debate. First of all, there's no report out in public, but there's not been a debate about what these findings are because we just don't know enough. So what we have right now is a museum that's built on this. We have another museum that has come up in Porunai, which is further in Tamil Nadu next to the Tirunelveli region, which has other sites that Tamil Nadu government has excavated. And we have a lot of chatter online about what this is. But in terms of an official report, none of us can go to the ASI website, look it up, and try and understand what this site is from the words of the people who are actually there digging up this site. So, and even the Tamil Nadu government is working on putting out an excavation. So once the ASI gave up on the site and moved on, the Tamil Nadu government took over it, and they have been digging for the last 7 years. They have put out a small book on Keeladi a few years ago, which sold like 25,000 copies in the Chennai Book Fair. And they have put out multiple other reports in the last few months as well. So there is material, but the original finding is yet to be revealed to the public.
Which, of course, immediately lends credence to those in Tamil Nadu who want to say this is a North India, South India business. There is another whole chapter in your book, which I think is extremely relevant to this entire conversation of North-South. And that is DNA and genetics. And DNA, of course, has now become the absolute essential thing that you need in order to put forward any theories. And so what do we have here? What we very, very briefly, to try and put some very complex material across to you. So it appears that all of us, all Indians, wherever we are born and wherever we come from, are a mixture of two strains which are proven from DNA. And one of these is maybe what you would call the earliest strain of people who moved out of Africa. We're going really 65,000 years ago, we're talking about, who moved out of Africa and came into the Indian subcontinent and moved further into the Andaman Islands and then moved further into Australia. This is one large strain of people. And this is 65,000 years ago, and this is the earliest strain. And then there is a second strain, which may be about 15,000 years ago. Maybe at most you can push it towards 18,000, 20,000, which seems to have come from the Central Asian steppes, from the Central Asian area, which has connections with things in Central Asia, and which then moved into northern India. So these two strains, every one of us, wherever we are born in this large subcontinent, is a mixture of these two strains. Big discussions about how to label these two strains, and everything depended on the labeling. If you called it from the steppes and from Central Asia and links with Europe and Indo-European languages, and therefore with the Aryans, you're then saying that the Aryans came in at a later date, and that the original inhabitants are the ones who have been here since 65,000 years ago or so. So that causes another huge problem. And so finally, it was the naming of these two groups, A and B, became a huge problem. And what do we have really? They finally decided to call the original group Ancient South Asians, Ancient South Indians, and the later group Ancient North Indians. That's where it stands now. And there is huge controversy because, of course, there's this whole idea of it's all connected with the Aryans, and how could the Aryans have come in later, and how could these be the original people? And that means that South India, then it's connected with the Indus civilization. And we have DNA from one single sample only, from one of the Indus sites, Rakhighari. And that one shows the single sample that is the ancient South Indian group. So if that's in the Indus Valley, that means the Indus Valley is also of this original ancient South Indian group. So you can sort of see what how much ink and how much speech and how much of demonstrations and anger and pride and everything all got mixed up in an archaeological dig, which normally is a very, dull, dusty sort of subject. And yet it has raised enormous angst and pride and disappointment and all sorts of things. Do talk to us a little bit more about that.
I just want to point out all of these are your words and not mine. I'm going to Delhi next week. I'm not making any claims about anything. I feel safer in Tamil Nadu and Goa. Thank you for hosting me.
It's a neutral sort of space here.
But I have to say, the genetics chapter in this book was the hardest for me to write. I'm a commerce graduate. I have no connection to science. So the thing with the book is I tell you often that I don't actually understand what's going on, because most of us don't. We are not like specialized in many things. And unless you have studied genomes and biology and science for years, some of this stuff goes over your head. So it was one of those chapters where I took a while to get my head around it. And I feel like I sort of use the experts as a major crutch to try and understand. So I sit with a lot of these experts and they kind of go back and forth themselves. And that was the point of this book, to also show how scientific findings are interpreted in modern India. And oftentimes it is sort of obfuscated in a way that you and I don't understand what's happening. So it's easier for them to make you believe, and by them, you can define what the them is. I'm not saying it, but for them to make you believe who you are and what your background is. So with this, what was interesting is one of the characters I found is this man called Virumandi, and he has this particular M130 gene marker, which is the 50,000 years ago, the person who walked from Africa. So there is remnants of that in Tamil Nadu today. He was discovered by an American geneticist called Spencer Wells, who came to India to make a National Geographic documentary. So if you go to YouTube after this, or whenever you find time, not after this, I mean, enjoy the rest of the day, but there's a documentary called Journey of Man, and you can see a young version of Virumandi standing at the back, and he's about to get tested for DNA. And I met Virumandi. He currently sells cloud computing in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai. We met over a plate of chili cheese fries, and he told me how it was to, be a part of this documentary and the kind of questions he had. And I think one of the most basic things for all of us in India is the question of who am I, right? We are all obsessed with it, whether we like it or not. In various capacities, we think of where did I come from? that where did I come from can be very restricted to where we live, or if you have more time, like I did, and inclination, you start digging further back in time. So to me, to try and understand this first wave, and that first wave is actually more the AASI. I'm not going to. This is very complex, so I would suggest go read about it. But it is the ancient ancestral South Indian, and those guys then mix, sorry, men and women. I was trying to make a point to not be gendered in the book, so people mix with local communities, local populations, and it gives strain to ancestral South Indian, a new genetic strain. And like you pointed out, with the people who migrated from the central steppes, there was this ancestral North Indian. And for a good amount of time, this ASI and ANI mixed a lot with each other. So if you or I take a DNA test, and I have taken a DNA test, the results are in the book, it will show you that there is really no purity in the way we think of ourselves. And I think that's easy for me to say. Of course, it comes from a place of privilege. I can make these statements. But it is true that we do fight more about our versions of who we are today without fully understanding what science has offered us in terms of who we are. And these two strains have mixed on and off till we got into what was more or less a rigid sort of endogamy phase because of our caste system. So at some point, we stopped mixing and we started getting into these really sort of tight groups. And with Virumandi, actually his group never mixed because they live in the small village, sort of remote, little outside of Madurai, and they marry within their own clan, right? So he married his cousin, his first cousin. So he too was saying that the reason that they could test him to figure out that original DNA marker is because of the fact that he didn't marry outside. So there are groups in India today which still offers, especially Adivasi populations, tribal populations who live in remote areas who haven't mixed. The Andaman tribes are a good example. But for most of us modern South Asians, it is a very mixed bag. In fact, it's so fascinating that we are really like, like a multicultural person. You can think of it as walking around, picking up different influences and landing up to where you are today, and how culturally that affects you as well. So if you ask me today, I'll say I'm proudly Tamil. I live in Chennai. I am Tamil. That will be one of my identity markers. But if you go back in time, I actually have picked up a whole bunch of things thanks to just where my ancestors have been. And that's really fascinating to think back to.
Yes, it is absolutely fascinating. I think you actually have your DNA markers in the book. I forget exactly how much of you is ancestral South Indian and how much is ancestral North Indian. Do you remember?
Can I live with you in Goa if I get exiled from the south and the north of India? I think it was about 24% Harappan, so AASI, and then I have a bit of Kurumba, and I have a bit of ethnic Serb and ethnic Turk. So, but this is from, okay, I gave my data to a horrible global DNA conglomerate. Don't do that. They have links to the bad guys. I don't want to name them, but Israel. I got a second test done, which is offering much more complexity to my story. Unfortunately, that second test came back a bit too late and I couldn't include it. But I have connections to the Rakhigarhi skeleton. So that's pretty cool, but it's not in the book. I won't be writing a part 2. I'm bored of this subject. So if you want to talk about it, I'm happy to DM you on Instagram, but I will not be writing about this. But what's exciting is that has a lot more complexity. And there was a cool map that showed that my people, perhaps my mom's side, because it's the mitochondrial DNA, came from Botswana back in the day. So, and there's a bit of Kalash. If you know Kalash, it's in like the Pakistan region. I'm really gonna get thrown out of this place. Please don't put this on the internet.
You're in safe grounds here.
Yeah, so there's a bit of mix of everything in me, and just to point out, there's this possibly a mix of everything in you guys as well.
In
so
everybody.
let's celebrate it rather than hating each other.
So, in other words, you don't want me to say that I am a Tamilian myself and I'm a native Tamil speaker.
See, I'll say all this, but at the heart of it, I am proudly Tamil.
Okay. Um, can we also do a little bit, very briefly? I know you may not want to go there, but I think I think we need to also bring in what you have actually brought in, but not emphasized, which is this whole business about um, the desire to make the Aryans and the Vedas key to the identity of India. And that seems to be a very important strain in certain parts of North India. And what is coming up from more recent DNA and genetic studies is that no, they came. This is that second wave, which somewhere around maybe 1500, 1800, 1200, in waves of people who came in, that you can't make the Harappans into the Aryans and the Vedic people, that there are two separate genetic strains there. And this sort of rubs against the grain for those who are very invested in the whole issue of the Aryans and the Vedas. So, I mean, do you want to say
Sure, of
anything
course.
about that?
I think there's a difference in, okay, it's important to distinguish the current political dispensation does not even acknowledge that Aryans came to India, right?
Yeah.
So what we have is a homegrown Vedic culture. And I think that is the point they're trying to make with this collapsing of timeline between the Harappans and when the Vedic culture began in the subcontinent. So that is the political project, to say that these were the Vedic Harappans and this was a continuation of the Harappan civilization. This is not something that came from outside. In fact, these are people who went from here abroad. The out of India theory is what's
Yeah.
being pushed. What genetics tells you is that no, there were people who were constantly coming into the subcontinent, and every wave brought in a whole bunch of mixture. So, politically speaking, and I think that is why Keeladi is such a big deal, because Keeladi did not show, and this was something that was emphasized constantly in my reporting, that it did not show signs of the Vedic culture. It was far away from the riverine plains of North India. It did not show religious artifacts of fire altars and so on. And here was a distinct civilization that came up in a Tamil, next to a Tamil river in Tamil Nadu. Because, of course, when we think of these situations in modern times, now the past is also framed within modern borders, right? So there's a lot of like, all of this is happening within present day Tamil Nadu. So the distinction is this, that we, one, are making it clear that we are far away from them and have a distinct culture. But there, the contention is, are the Harappans the Vedic people or not? And there's enough archaeological evidence to suggest that they are not the same people. But again, it's the interpretation. And a second level of that is to writing it into the textbooks. So what's happened even with the Rakhigarhi sample is that it's written into your NCERT textbooks to suggest that, hey, we don't find any steppy sort of influence. So this is homegrown, and therefore we are all from that sample, and so there's no outside influence. So if you go look up your kids' history textbooks, which is written in the north, there is this distinction to point out everything came from like sons of the soil, we are from here, which in Tamil Nadu we say Mandalendu Porandade, everything happened in the Tamil soil. So it is sort of similar in terms of the nature of the politics being played out, but it's the interpretation. I think one of the things I want to point out is this is a South India book for a reason, because there's so much written about the North. I spent way too much time, thank you. I spent way too much time I spent 7 years in Delhi and I had to put up with a lot of pop culture references, whether I liked it or not. I learned Hindi because of Shah Rukh Khan. But you guys don't get to know who Vadivel is, who's a famous comedian in our state. Any Tamil person would know him. But to me, to explain that to you is very difficult because you just won't get it, and it's fair enough. But my point with this book is to say, if I am a person sitting in Tamil Nadu and I want to understand this debate going on in the North, my way to do it is the internet, and the internet only offers a certain version of this country, which is kind of skewed. If you look up all of these interpretations of these sites on YouTube, you have a plethora of things that gives you the wrong kind of information. So my point is to say, just as you are not, and I'm not trying to be a politician here, but just like the Prime Minister has never acknowledged Keeladi openly. He's never spoken about it even once. He talks about the ancient nature of the Tamil language, but he's never spoken about this site. It has never come out of his mouth, right? Similarly, if you are looking at us a certain way, I wanted to point out that if I was going to look at the North, these are the references I'm getting. And secondly, if you read the book, for Tamil people, you'll find some jokes. And I was really, really clear that I wanted those jokes in. Because if I'm going to try and understand your language, then I would want you to understand my references. If you don't understand, that's fine too. But it allows some person in the know to have a giggle. So it was important that these cultural exchanges that we had in the past, I felt should be reflected in present India as well. And this was my attempt to do it. Thank you.
I think before I open it up to the audience, who I'm sure would love to express themselves and ask questions, I'd just like to bring in one other. Oh, sorry. I'd like to bring in one other aspect that we might want to look at. We are talking about the Vedas in the north, and maybe marginally after that or overlapping with that, we're talking about Sangam literature in the south. The world of those two is so different. It is amazing. The Sangam literature has got, like everybody knows there's a Rig Veda, the Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda, everybody knows that. But in South India, there are two main things, Patupattu and Irtu Togai. You've got 10 poems and 8 anthologies. And the world is divided up in a very different concept and way of thinking and looking at your surroundings. Everything is 5 different types of geographical spaces in the south. So you've got the hills, which is Kurunji. You've got the forests, which is Mullai. You've got the plains, Maradam. You've got seaside, Neiral. And you've got the wilderness, Pale. And everything is aham, internal and love, and puram, outside, pur, and war. A very different whole concept, and the entire world of this poetry, which is what is being said, is what we are finding in Keeladi and the other sites now, is so very different. It's just something extra that I want to throw into this mix that we are thinking about and seeing how the world is conceived very differently in these two early sets of literature, one in Tamil and one in Vedic Sanskrit. So just to throw that in, and I don't know whether you want to say
Sure. No, of
anything.
course. I wouldn't comment on the Vedas. I didn't spend time writing about it in this book for a reason. I think there's enough written about it. The Sangam poetry, I tried to understand it for myself. I did a poetry course in translation by a woman, a scholar called Vaidehi Herbert. She lives in Hawaii, and she held these Sunday morning 9 a.m. classes. So a bunch of us from you can think of it as ancient Tamilagam. So both Tamil Nadu and Kerala, a bunch of blurry-eyed, interested people logged on, and what she'd do is she divided the poems into themes and she would talk to us about it and what it meant. So I got a sense of the Sangam poems quite late in life. Unfortunately, I was not good in languages in school, but unfortunately I was forced into studying Sanskrit and I did horribly in it. So I have no idea why I was made to do it. But if I had studied Tamil, perhaps I studied Tamil till fifth standard, but if I had kept on it, I would have sort of been introduced to these poems earlier. But essentially, these poems have an incredible description of ancient Tamil region, which is both Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And I have someone in the book who put it very beautifully. He said he went on a hike with his partner, with his wife, and he was standing up on this hill and he suddenly looked around and found that the descriptions were identical to one of the poems, and he just stood there and started reciting this poem to his wife, right? So what is beautiful about these poems, in journalism it's great, it's like wonderful descriptive writing. If I put you in a spot and ask you to describe what's around you, these poems have done a really, really good job of doing that even today when you go back to many of these places, and these poems have historically served as clues for archaeologists. This is not cut off from the world. There have been people who have taken these poems as clues and shown up to the ground and found that, oh, what the poems are saying is something that I'm able to see here, right? So some of the earlier dying vats, the brick walls, the ramparts were all like mentioned. Madurai was mentioned beautifully back at how it looked. Now it may not look like that anymore. You have a very small portion of the old city left, but it has a wonderful selection of how it used to look, what it looked like, and so on. And there's one person, one of the most senior archaeologists in Tamil Nadu, Professor Rajan, he got a one-line reference from a poem and went to Western Tamil Nadu to a place called Kodumanal, and that reference was to a bead, and he pulled out hundreds of beads from that place. So it was all based on that one sort of reference. He said, let me go on an exploration. So these poems are, I think, what Keeladi did for the Tamil scholarly community is that it was tangible proof of life, how it looked like that. Perhaps maybe that requires a lot more scrutiny. Perhaps there's more work to be done on this. But the elation came from a place that, hey, we finally found tangible proof of what the poems were singing about. And that is also why it has been termed a Sangam era site. I talk about it in the book as Keeladi became a Sangam laboratory. It felt like epigraphists and archaeologists were throwing in verses into the trenches, and out came like proof of these artifacts. And if you go to the museum today, every artifact has a little tablet next to it with the exact reference from the poem or what the poems are saying about that artifact, whether that's iron, whether that's textiles, whether that's cotton, how people dressed, and so on. Of course, the argument can be that, oh, this is a bit simplistic, it requires a lot more work. I think that's completely fair. It requires a lot. And I think H.T. Sankalya has spoken about this in the context of Puranas and Vedas and Sangam literature, that what we tend to do is we do this retrofitting, which is very easy to do, and there requires a lot more sort of thinking around it. So to me, this site, I think personally, it allowed me an insight into ancient Tamil poetry. And I only unfortunately read in translation, but it's really mesmerizing. Like there are times where I just sit and read random stories, and it's really beautifully put together.
There is a wonderful penguin book, small one, by a talented poet himself, A.K. Ramanujan, called Interior Landscape. It's absolutely beautiful, and they are short poems, and if you ever want to get a feel of what this Tamil literature, early Tamil literature is, I'd really recommend that. Now, before I open it up, I just want to mention, there's one more site, Porunai, which has come into the general consciousness in Tamil Nadu. And it is a person whose name is Aditya Ramchandran Venkatapati. He's known as Hip Hop Adi. He is a hip hop guy. And it's amazing how many people, this is the site that he is known to be connected with and be all excited about. But it's absolutely amazing how many people and what a wide range of people have been drawn into this material. And now, if I can open it, do you want to say something?
No, just the Porunai museum has opened up near Tirunelveli. I haven't been yet, but apparently it's a wonderful collection of, again, artifacts from all the sites around the Porunai River, also called as the Tamirabarani River. So if you ever find yourself in southern Tamil Nadu, go have a look. It's apparently really, really beautiful to visit.
So we have 10 minutes left, and I would like to open it up to the audience.
Sowmiya, I'm curious about Virumandi. Was the choice a fluke, or did they expect the entire village to have, the community that he belonged to have this strain of, what did you say, 150?
M130.
M130.
Was it a choice of? I didn't catch that.
No, was it a fluke?
Oh,
that
few
they
people were
landed
tested?
No, that Virumandi was tested.
Right.
Yeah, or was it?
So actually, there was because of this documentary that I mentioned, there is a geneticist called Dr. Pichappan who lives in Madurai. He actually went to a local college and just tested the blood of, DNA test, drew samples, not blood, spat into these things to see what the population was. And that's how they discovered Virumandi. And the story, I would encourage you to read it, but when they first told him he has something like this, he thought it was a disease. And he started sweating, and it was an AC room, and he was just like, oh my God, am I going to die? And I think what followed was really interesting because press, this is still the 90s, but Tamil press got involved, and people started putting up pictures of him bare chested as he was climbing up to get coconuts from a tree. And in Tamil, they said, Kurangalendu vanda mudal manidan, which is the man who came from, first man who came from the monkey, right? So he felt really bad because this was, again, a silly misinterpretation of, not even silly, it's actually quite hurtful misinterpretation of what the science was saying. So his entire village would likely have, but it's a Y chromosome, so his father. So it comes from the father. It's a Y chromosome marker.
Thank you.
There's one.
Thank you, ladies, for lovely synopsis of everything in your world. One short form question, one long form question. Short form question is for an idiot like me who knows almost nothing about Keeladi. Would Google be the right place to go to? Yeah, you can respond right away if you want.
My book, please.
Sure.
Buy it.
Great. Okay, so that's a great start. Thank
Why
you.
did it?
Awesome.
Come on, 3 years of my work.
100%.
Why would you go to Google?
100%, 100%. Okay, good. Long form question for possibly for Vijay ma'am, and you can also attempt to answer. Coming from tech background, there's a little rule that we follow when we construct programs and apps. What's the problem we're trying to solve, and what are the problems it's going to create? They're not really pondering over it much these days, the second one. The question I have for the archaeology world, it could be a bit of a reductionist question, but what's the problem that you try to solve as archaeologists? Possibly putting the little mosaics and the pieces together is a response from an idiot like me. And what are the problems that the trail of archaeology creates, given the maelstrom of geopolitics that it could be dealing with?
That is precisely what her book has explored, the whole thing. It really is encompassing what she has written about, because each of its chapters tries to deal with one or other of these various strands. You would imagine that the archaeological material should be pretty clear, and that you're doing dating, accelerator, mass spectrometry, which originally went to Florida, but I think they're now doing it in Tamil Nadu? Yes. So it's now being done here. So it should be pretty clear. And I think a whole lot of us are completely stunned by the fact that this archaeological report, 982 pages it's supposed to be, they're refusing to release it. And why not just put it out there? You can put it out there to say there's some problems with it. Some of our archaeologists think that they have gone too far, whatever you want to say, but put it out so at least the scholarly world will be able to assess it and do it. So that part of it is one doesn't understand why they are holding it up, really. And the second bit of it is because it's all this, the North India, South India, the Vedas, the Aryans, and the Harappans, and how can you now say that the ancient South Indian, whatever it's
The
called,
narratives, yeah, agreed.
that Indus site has that DNA, in which case you have to open up and open your mind a little bit more. You don't have to jump to a conclusion, but you've got to sort of look at it and say the evidence is showing us this. How do we handle it, and what does it imply?
Agreed.
And I
Sorry,
guess
I'm
that's a
jumping in.
very adult way of looking at it, and people are being quite childish about this
Sorry,
subject.
my question leans into the question whether this kind of a situation disheartens future archaeologists, I guess. Sorry.
Yes and no, but I think what this has done is it has fueled more resources into archaeology. So in Tamil Nadu, this is one of the main issues to put money into. So we've discovered more things. I'm speaking like I'm an archaeologist. They have discovered more things in the last few years. So it went from a very sleepy department to a high functioning department. So that's a very big deal and Tamil Nadu is one of the highest funders for archaeology right now.
We're running short of time, so you can even talk to them after this. You'll meet them outside. So thank you everyone for being here today, and more power to the South, I say. I mean, really, incredible work.
Thank you. I'm
Incredible
moving to
work.
Goa in a month.
Fascinating work, and this book is available to buy just outside this venue. So I hope you all will dig in deep into the book and learn the facts and not Google.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Just one.